on, you guys could do better than that. I live in Los Angeles, so I don't even know what time it is right now, but generally, you guys should be more awake than I am. So hi. Okay, we're getting there, a little better. It's great to be here. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Akolade. Thank you guys for being here. You know, when I was over here the other night, kind of doing the rehearsal and figuring out the robotics and all that stuff, I kind of imagined what it would be like up here in front of you. But being with you is something else, so thank you. Now, before we get started, we have to take care of something. And we're here to talk about innovation, right? Yeah. We're catching on. Great. So to really have innovation come alive, we have to do things a little bit differently. And we have to make sure that everybody's awake and everybody's with us. So let's do something really quick and just humor me with this, all right? So if everybody could just stand up. Now, if I said hi, you guys would all be right with me, right? Yeah. Awesome. So reach your hands up in the air. Bend down. Grab all your stuff and move closer to the front. I'm not kidding. Innovation really does happen with engagement. And by coming up here, you're part of the conversation, and it's going to make a difference for you. So come on, guys. Come on. I won't bite, I promise, and I also won't call on you, so you don't have to worry about that. You guys are awesome. Thank you. I love this. And I love Australia, too, by the way. So this is my first time here, believe it or not. Well, this is much better. Thank you. Yeah. Wow. You guys feel the difference? It's so different, at least from up here. Awesome. So to get started, I'm going to play you a little video, and then we can really get into things, okay?
Innovation. It's something we all talk about, and talk about so much it loses the real meaning behind what it really is. Big dreams often give way to incremental changes, process improvements, and essentially just slightly better versions of the past. Well, today, we're going to go a step further and actually put you in the driver's seat to not just make a better past, but to create an entirely new future. Give us the next 60 minutes and we'll give you the keys of innovation to leave you someone who can make the change, be the difference, and become the source of innovation.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Right now, we are experiencing the highest rate of change in history, and your potential has never been greater. The catch is, it takes something to do things differently, to break the patterns of history and the patterns of yourself, to go about life and business in a new way. As retailers, as humans, the overwhelm of innovation lulls us into inaction. Each new technology we look at can yield literally millions of different versions of your potential. And if we have to sit up and engage them, how do we know which to choose? Well, we've spent decades working with brands, working with retailers, working with innovation, not just to create a news flash or a press release, but to give them access to developing a culture of innovation, the ability to pivot, adjust, and change to where the opportunities are. And today it's your turn. Today we're going to start that process with you, so you can turn your retail operation into something that serves your customers, your employees, and yourself in entirely new ways.
Okay, so let's try it again. Hi! Great! Awesome. So I got to tell you guys, I have one of the best jobs in the world. I get to travel around and spend time with the people creating the next generation emerging technologies and the retailers and brands and wholesalers implementing this stuff. And the innovation conversation is front and center in commerce these days. I don't think there's a leading retailer, brand, even investment group in the retail space that I haven't heard from lately about it. And, you know, it's always been interesting. But lately we've got like autonomous cars. We've got drones delivering products, right? We live in a world today where purchases happen in virtual reality. And we talk to robots. Well, today is no different. I'd like to introduce to you my assistant today, Sandbai. Let's welcome Sandbai. Hey, Sandbai, we were just talking about you.
Is it me, or you are just too tall?
It's robot humor. It's you.
Hold on, am I not giving a presentation?
You guys didn't know they were taking our jobs already, right? It's not your turn yet, Sandbot. Give me a little bit, and then we'll get back to you.
Okay, Sterling, make it quick.
Right. I'm getting bossed around by the robot now, and I will, because we've got a lot to cover today. Okay? We're going to start out talking about what's happening in retail, what's happening in commerce today. And hint, we're not in charge anymore. Then we're going to get into innovation thinking. How do you create innovation in your business? And what's the secret sauce that Amazon's using around innovation? What can you take from that? And then finally, I've got several case studies around what the future of commerce is looking like, but today. And these are technologies that hit the sweet spot between, yeah, they're new, yeah, they're emerging, but they're also economically viable. And we're going to do it all in about 45 minutes. You guys with me? Yeah? Are you guys with me? Yes. Okay, good. I'll do it every time if we have to. So part of why I love what I do so much is because it brings me back to my roots. I'm actually a fifth-generation retailer, believe it or not. I don't run operations anymore, but my family store got started at a roadside produce stand back in 1934 by my great-great-grandmother. And she was selling produce from my family's farm. And it grew through the years to become a modern supermarket in central New York in the US, and a real cornerstone of the community. And, well, it's where I grew up. And I don't know if you guys remember, but when I was a kid, retail was a little bit different. You know, we knew all of our customers, not just by name, but we knew their families. We knew their likes, their dislikes, what they might like. We could extend credit on a wave. Oh, you forgot your wallet? No problem. We'll see you tomorrow. I even remember one time, a couple of times, we put groceries in the trunk of my dad's car on the way home from the store and dropped them off at customers' houses on our way home. And that was before grocery delivery or any delivery was a thing, right? Because it's a thing now. Everybody's talking about home delivery. Well, somewhere along the way, we as a store, we as an industry lost track of the consumer, and it became more about mass, more about volume. And loyalty helped. Like loyalty programs, they did help. And we were actually one of the first stores in the US at least to launch loyalty. And it's what led me into doing what I do today, kind of tracking with that explosion of loyalty in the early 90s through the mid-90s, and the explosion of technology that's even bigger today. And it's also led me into doing what I'm doing right now, speaking. And if you can't tell, it's one of my favorite things to do. I'll tell you, this is a quick story. Years back, this is like 15 years ago, I was speaking at a conference in Japan for Mitsubishi, and it was the largest presentation I had given to date. maybe 500, 600 people. And, I was nervous. 15 years ago, I was much younger. There were tons of people there, so I knew exactly what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. And you probably know they speak Japanese in Japan, and I don't speak Japanese. Not at all. And so I get up on stage, and I give my first couple of lines, and the translator starts right on cue. It's going perfectly. Well, 30 seconds go by, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. 2 minutes later, I don't have a clue what's coming out of this translator's mouth, and the entire audience starts laughing. I didn't tell a joke. So I stumble through the rest of this thing, right? And I catch him afterwards, and I say, Mr. Numata, that was his name, Mr. Numata, what did you say up there? Well, like, why was everybody laughing? And he goes, well, I told him you were here talking about the future of commerce and all those technology things, but you were really here just to find a Japanese wife. And I'm like, well, that's perfect for my credibility, right? Like, I'm starting on the right foot. But what I got that day is two really important things. The first is, well, if you're ever looking for a date in Japan, Mr. Numata's your guy. He's still over there, he's still kicking, even these 15 years later. The second thing is foundational to literally everything we are doing and everything you should be doing in business, which is, if you are going to have your desired impact on the customer, well, you had better speak their language. And today, that's more important than ever. Right? It used to be, back in the early 1900s, you would walk into a retailer or a merchant, request what products you wanted. He'd go in the background, get them, and give them to you, and you'd pay and leave. And that was retail. And then they had this incredible innovation, which was, let's just put the products on the shelf, and the customers can do it themselves. And bam, modern retailing was born. Well, that's kind of how it continued on and continues on. We had some innovations in there. Like scanning was in the mid-70s or so, and then we had self-checkout, loyalty, of course. There's a number of other things if we were to fully build out that timeline. But the point is this. All of those things were industry-led innovations. Industry decisions saying, oh yeah, we're going to do this, and we're not going to do that. Right? We don't live in a world like that anymore. Somewhere with the iPhone or around the iPhone, consumers started taking the position of, oh, I'm on mobile now, and if you want to do business with me, you need to be on mobile too. And then it sounded things like, well, I'm really busy, so if you don't have relevant content for me, I'm going to transact with somebody else. And it's what will be things like, I'm in virtual reality, and if you want to do business with me, you have to be there too. And these are the languages consumers are speaking. They're speaking in these new forms of technologies. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of things you probably know. And if you don't know them, well, now's your chance. Over half the world's online, right? A lot of people in the world. I think it's something like a population the size of Melbourne comes online every couple of days. So everybody's online, more people coming online all the time, especially in a market like this. Many people are mobile, and one of the reasons we're all here is many of those people are also transacting mobily, right? And this is just kind of the beginnings of the story that we're about to talk through. We're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's going on with technology and what's available today. And sometimes when you're in the middle of something, you kind of lose the perspective. You kind of get lost in, well, where was it exactly we started and where are we headed again? So I find that a couple specific examples help kind of orient us around how fast this stuff is happening. We all know Uber. I got over here in an Uber this morning, which was super convenient because I can use it all around the world. Well, in 2014, they hit the 1 million rider mark. Wow. 1 million people took a ride in Uber. 3-4 years later, 5.5 million riders a day. 3-4 years. That kind of growth. WeChat. A chat messenger popularized in China and now growing to other parts of the world. Well, in 2013, they launched WeChat Pay. Again, 3-4 years later, 600 million users. Like, you got to get how fast that's happening. And, well, I can't forget our good friends at Amazon, right? Which seems to be front and center for a lot of conversations I've had here lately. Now, Amazon has their smart speaker called Echo. Do you guys know Echo? And Alexa? Yeah? Yeah. Well, for anybody that didn't say yes, or just said yes so we all fit in together, Alexa is Amazon's artificial intelligence tool. And Echo is their smart speaker home. Now, this was not a thing. There were no such things as artificial intelligence you could interact with or a smart speaker or anything else. Just a couple of years ago, 2014. Here we are, again, 3-4 years later, 31 million of these things are in the market. 31 million. And they're not cheap. I mean, they've got a lot of hardware devices now, but Echo specifically is like somewhere around 100 Australian dollars. 31 million of those sold. Now, I'm from California, New York originally, and all my friends from back east, they make fun of me because I'm into yoga and juicing, healthy lifestyle. Like, I bought in hook, line, and sinker to West Coast lifestyle. So this is kind of my nod to that, right? And yoga is about aligning mind, body, and spirit. And just like that, right now we've got this incredible opportunity to bring together our stores, our people, with technology and the consumer to create like this incredible retail experience, right? And with the speed of customer adoption and the speed of technology growth, retail must be pretty great, right? Nope. US, Europe, Asia, Australia, retail has not fundamentally changed since the advent of modern retailing. Now, don't get me wrong, there's exceptions, there's outliers, there's companies that don't fit the mold, but overall, as an industry, we have not fundamentally changed in like 100 years. We're doing basically the same thing. And that doesn't work. This is the proof. Last couple of years, more stores have closed than ever before in history. More than ever before are closing. And I've talked to a lot of these retail executives, and they used to explain away their lack of performance as, well, we had the wrong seasonal mix of items, or our pricing strategy was a little bit off. And for the first time, I'm starting to hear from these guys, yeah, we hit a brick wall with Amazon painted on the side of it. A company, by the way, which accounted for 53% of all e-commerce growth in 2016. 53% of global e-commerce growth. Now, interestingly, Amazon is like barely coming into this market, right? And we're still seeing the same thing. Gap has closed, Specialty Fashion Group, Meyer's closing stores. So it's not Amazon. But what it means to be an effective retailer today is changing. And a lot of people get down on the stores because of that. Like, oh, why do you need that overhead? You've got online, you've got mobile. Why do you need stores anymore? Well, I'll tell you what. For over 100 years, we've been putting the stores specifically around the people that buy stuff. It's not the stores that are the problem. It's how they're coming together with technology to service the customer. There is tremendous, tremendous opportunity in store. And here's the proof. More stores have opened in the last couple of years than ever before in history. So then the question's obvious, right? Why are some stores blowing the doors off and others permanently shuttering them? Why is Amazon having this like unimaginable growth and other retailers can't figure out how to make money online? Well, it has to do with our thinking, and it has to do with our business culture. You see, we've got this habit as an industry of adding technology on to everything we've already always been doing. Oh yeah, now we're going to add that, and we're going to add this other thing, and well, we're going to keep the process exactly the same, but now it's going to be digital. We're in the future, man. Well, yeah. There's nothing wrong with that, but that kind of linear way of thinking yields very incremental results. And there's nothing wrong with linear thinking, by the way. It's something we're all predisposed to. It's like just because we're human, we get that. And we actually need it in our lives and in our businesses. We cannot do without it, but what it looks like is you are literally looking back. You're turning into history and you're saying, what can I fix? What can I change? What can I adjust? When you're looking at things that way, the best, the absolute best you're going to end up with is a slightly better version of what you already have. Now, no problem. Like we said, we need that. But some of these stats, and these are global stats from the industry, beg for something more, right? Only about 25% of retailers have said, oh yeah, we're going to use more and better data analytics next year to improve our business. So 75% of retailers don't need that? And about 50% of retailers have an app. Well, didn't we just say in the beginning, if you're not speaking your customer's language, they might choose not to do business with you? And I would also say a far fewer percentage actually have an app that matters, something that consumers want to engage with, right? And finally, 80% of our technology budgets are going to maintaining the technology we already have. Just, keeping it going, keeping it alive. Now, it's our job, literally, our responsibility, us in this room, to transform retail into that low-friction, easily accessible, highly personalized, customer-centric world that every one of us knows is possible. I know you guys know it, right? You know what a good customer experience is. You know how this technology should work. In fact, oftentimes we're talking about it in boardrooms. But it doesn't show up in how we're doing business day to day. So I have another story for you. Has anybody ever heard the story about the invention of chess? Wow, nobody? Okay, a couple people. So you're going to hear my version now. So a long, long time ago, the story goes, the emperor of China was bored. And he did what bored emperors did back then. He called a local game merchant, and he said to him, hey, come up with a game for me that I'm never going to get bored with. Well, not able to refuse the emperor, the game merchant goes away, and I don't know if it took days or weeks or months or however long, he comes up with the game chess. And he goes back to the palace and shows the emperor, guess what? The emperor loved it. Like really loved it. And he said to him, how can I ever repay you? This is the greatest game. I am never going to get bored with this. Well, he thinks for a moment, and he says, well, you pay me in rice, because that's how you were paying people back then. And we'll take the chessboard. And on the first square of the chessboard, we'll put 1 grain of rice. And for every square thereafter, well, we're going to double that. And at the end of the chessboard, that's how much you'll pay me for this game. Oh, the emperor hardly even thought about it. Like, how much rice could that possibly be? Especially for this great game, right? So they shake hands or paper the deal or whatever they did back then, and they go about adding up the rice. Well, the first half of the chessboard, relatively uneventful. It added up to like a large field of rice, which, you know, that'd be a good price for game chess, right? Especially if you patented it these days. The second half of the chessboard, though, that's where things started to get interesting. You see, by the last square, it added up to over 18 million trillion grains of rice. And you're saying, well, how much rice is that, Sterling? I'll tell you. If you take 10 grains per square inch, it's enough rice to cover the entire surface of the Earth, including the oceans, twice. I told you that story, so I can tell you this. The greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. Now, we all get it in theory. We all know what the graph looks like. But as it comes to how it manifests itself in our lives, it's an entirely different story. Just to take processing here, right? Because processing is foundational to all technology innovation today. As a species, let's say, we're creating the data equivalent of 25 years of HD video every single day. Now, $1,000 could buy you the processing power of like an insect brain around the year 2000. About now, it'll buy you the processing power of a mouse brain, and in a couple of years, $1,000 will buy you the processing power of a human brain. Like, let that sink in for a second. A human brain for $1,000. This is where it gets crazy, though. By 2045, which is really not all that long from now, $1,000 processor will buy you the processing power of all human brains combined. It'll be about 9 billion people at that point for $1,000. Now you know that, right? Like now you've got a kind of a fun fact you could share with your friends or your colleagues or your families. You know that information now. But how it manifests itself in our lives and our businesses is completely unfathomable from where we sit today. Technology is on this exponential growth curve. Like all these emerging technologies, 3D printing, AI, robotics, drones, IoT, you name it, it's on this growth curve. And, more good news, as these technologies come together or converge, it drives innovation further and faster. So imagine, for example, 3D printed food coming together with wearables. So all of a sudden, your nutrients are exactly what you need. Or robotics coming together with AI. Now you have robots you can actually interact with. They start to get more human. So here's what we're ending up with. If we take the linear trajectory that retail's currently on, right? What most of us are currently delivering in our business, the entirety of retail, and you overlay on top of that the exponential growth of technology, well, there's a space in between there. And that space is the innovation gap, where Amazon and countless startups are stepping into. And it's the potential, it's the possibility that we can all step into too. So that little voice in your head is probably saying, well, how do we do that? That sounds pretty good, right? At least there'd be some cool technologies as part of the discussion. Well, if linear thinking gives you incremental results, innovation thinking gives you breakthrough results. And again, it is a way of thinking. It's a business culture, and it is the secret sauce that Amazon uses. Now, a company that spent $15 billion on technology innovation last year. $15 billion into technology innovation. Wow, that's bigger than my whole business. Well, how do you think they got there? By continually asking the question, what's possible? What if? That same question is your access to innovation thinking, right? With the linear thinking, you're looking into the past. With innovation thinking, yeah, you're noting the past. It's there. It exists, but you turn into the future and you ask that question, well, what else is possible? What can be different given technology today? And there's two additional things you must do. The first is, well, you've got to share that idea, right? You can't just have it and ask that question and write in your journal that night. That won't work. So share it with your friends, your family, your business. And the last step is that you must put something on the line for it. You have to have something at stake. There has to be something at risk, right? If you want that innovation thinking and breakthrough results, something has to be up at risk where you have a perceived equal and opposite risk. And I say perceived because it always looks worse than it is. Okay? So you ask the question, what if? And then follow through by putting something at stake. And where do you ask the question? Well, wherever you're bored in your business, like wherever you're starting to check out, or, this is my favorite, wherever the answer to why something happens a certain way is because, well, yeah, we've always done it that way. And, by the way, you can apply that question not just to your business, but to culture. Oh, well, why do we go into stores and buy stuff? I don't know, we've always done it that way. Right? Now, innovation thinking and the results that come from it, it's not comfortable. It might not even be what you want to do in the moment, but you do it because you are committed to those breakthrough results. You are committed to making the difference. Now, I get the question all the time, as you might expect. Oh, okay, great, Sterling. Well, what does the future of retail look like? And I tell them the story of two fish. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard the story before, but I'll make it quick. There's this guy sitting on a park bench. And it's a beautiful day out. Green grass, blue sky, nice trees, and there's a pond. And he gets up and he walks down to the pond, and there's a couple of fish in there. This is a world where fish can talk, by the way. And he says to the fish, "How's the water?" "Ah, water's great." And he smiles and he walks away, and the second fish looks at the first fish and is like, "What is water?" That omnipresence, so much so that it's not distinct from anything else around it, is what the future of commerce looks like. Now, I just became an uncle 15 months ago for the first time. And it was funny, when my brother told me he was having a baby, I knew I was going to love her, right? It's my niece. And then she was born, and I was like, oh, I really love her. And I'm getting up to San Francisco where they live as often as I can get. This is the world that she's going to grow up in, where commerce is so embedded in her day-to-day life that oftentimes it's not distinct from everything else that she's doing. So let's not just talk about case studies now and bore you with numbers, but let's take like a day in the life, right? And this will be a day in my life. All the technologies that are happening today, all that's working. So I'm not a morning person. I don't know how you guys are. I feel like you guys aren't morning person. Are you? No. You're a little more awake now. At least you laughed. Yeah. Well, I usually hit the snooze button a couple of times. You guys do that too? Like 2, 3 times, so, 20, 30 minutes later, I'm finally ready to get out of bed. And I say out loud, hey, Google, give me a coffee. And a voice speaks back to me and says, good morning, Sterling. Do you want your usual? I say, yeah. I've just interacted with artificial intelligence. Now, there's tons of kinds of artificial intelligence, and there's countless applications for it. This particular kind is called conversational commerce. Now, just like Amazon's Alexa, Hey Google works the same way, right? And you can turn music on with these things. You can turn the lights off. You can order things, of course. The point is that as we move our businesses onto these big tech platforms, we are not managing the customer relationship anymore. Google is. Amazon is. Wherever you have outsourced your conversational commerce to, it's no longer your customer. You're just providing things. Well, here's the case study part. One of the largest airlines in the world and one of the largest insurance companies in the world have solved this with a startup based out of Dallas, Texas in the US. This company has developed a white label version of Alexa. So call it whatever you like, but both of these companies implemented that software in their customer service department. And just like a new employee might take about 8 weeks to get up to speed, this thing also took 8 weeks to get up to speed. It watched, it listened, it paid attention to the subtleties of human interaction that most of us probably aren't even conscious of. And at the end of 8 weeks, it got turned on. Now, in both cases, it was able to handle 80% of customer service inquiries. 80%. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but if you've got a solution that costs about as much as a single employee that can handle 80% of the workload, well, you freed up some people. You freed up some capital to focus on what I would suggest more strategic priorities, like, well, why do you have so many people calling customer service to begin with, right? So let's get back to my coffee. I get a text message. My coffee has finally arrived. And I open the door, and it's not a person standing there. It's a robot. Now, robots have been in the supply chain for a while, right? Warehouses.
It's got to be my turn now.
It's almost your turn, but not yet. They've been in warehouses for a while, right? Moving cases and pallets and that kind of thing. What's happening now is piece-picking robots, where they're picking individual items and assembling e-commerce orders. Huge implications there. Now, it works, but it hasn't really been deployed yet. It's still going to be, I would say, about a year, maybe 15 months before we see this actually rolled out at scale and working that way. Then we've got these last-mile delivery robots, like the one I interacted with. Now, these come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Autonomous vehicles that are on the sidewalks, autonomous vehicles on the street delivering products. We even have companies using drones to deliver products now. And the one I was speaking of is a company called Starship, and they've got a partnership with Postmates. Now, they have rolled out this technology in pilot in several different locations. It's in London, it's in Washington, D.C., where you literally have robots rolling around the sidewalk, about the size of like a small electric golf cart, delivering products to people. My favorite part is that it's 80% cheaper to deliver things with robots than it is a human. And you might notice, Wow, those big numbers keep coming up. Yeah, 80% savings is not rare with a lot of these emerging technologies. In fact, it applies to most of them. And of course, we've got in-store, and two types of in-store. The first is robotics that are managing inventory, like Walmart's doing. And we're going to talk more about that during, I think tomorrow, my robotics presentation, if you want to join me there. We'll be talking about that. And also, customer service robots. And yes, it is Sandbot's turn. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Sandbot?
I have over 70,000 assistants around the world. I have been everything from being a school teacher to a shop assistant, and here I am being your assistant.
There you have it. Did you guys hear that back there? Wow, good. So the net is that robotics, at least customer service kinds of robotics, like Sandbot here, a company based out of China, robots can be a platform where you can develop software and applications to have the platform do anything. Be an assistant, teach people, handle basic customer service questions, and as she said, there's 70,000 of them out there in the world today doing exactly that. So let's get back to my story, right? So I've got my coffee, I did my yoga because I have to do that, and I'm about to leave the house. I'm out of toilet paper. Hey, you know the funny thing about being out of toilet paper? It always like rises to the top of your to-do list, right? Not for me, though. Because I press this button, and I know the toilet paper is going to get delivered to my front porch by the time I'm home that afternoon. What I'm talking about, of course, is the Amazon Dash button, or an Internet of Things device that's single-purpose reordering just with pressing that button. So it works for toilet paper, coffee, paper towels, anything you reorder on a regular basis. Amazon today, this is a year ago, so let's say Amazon a year ago, because I'm sure it's more today, has 4 orders a minute coming in from button services. Well, of course somebody paid attention to that. It was a company out of Israel called Quick, and they partnered with a company called Sodastream. Do you guys know Sodastream? Is that here? Yeah? Yeah, it carbonates beverages, and, well, you have to reorder CO2 cartridges to do that. And they went a step further than Amazon did, because it wasn't just a button you'd press to reorder, but it was a smart button. So it sits on the Sodastream device, and it knows exactly your usage. Not forecasted, exactly how much you're using. Now, Amazon lost $7 billion in same-day and 2-day shipping last year. Well, if you know exactly how much a customer is using of your product, you can start to get ahead of that curve, right? Maybe send it out a week in advance. And, by the way, 20% more product was sold for Sodastream, right? 20% more of those cartridges were sold. Cool, right? Well, here's the implication, and it's a big one. As our devices, as the appliances in our home become connected to reordering systems like this, it literally takes entire categories out of the traditional retail market. Entire categories we may not need in stores anymore. Now, I finish up, I leave, and I need to get some new sneakers because, you know, I've been on the road a long time. I'm going to go for a run. So I go to the store, and I pick out my sneakers, and they're actually custom 3D printed for my feet. Now, 3D printing, it's been in the conversation for a while. It's really good for 3 things in retail: prototyping, personalizing or customizing different products, and performance, right? Making things that otherwise literally cannot be made. Well, Adidas is actually doing that with midsoles of sneakers today. They're making a midsole that cannot exist without 3D printing. Cool, right? They're going to sell 100,000 of these sneakers this year. This year. And it's a $30 billion market by 2022, which, by the way, is just a couple of years before $1,000 will buy you the processing power of all human brains combined. Now, we've got a lot of fulfillment people here, right? So that's cool. 3D printing's awesome. We're going to have that. But think about the implications if you can start 3D printing some of your products in stores. You may not need to ship finished goods to stores anymore. You can just ship raw materials and have it all customized in store. Maybe a couple implications to supply chain there, yeah? Yeah? Yeah, you guys are all fulfillment people. You're like, oh my God, really? Yeah, really. And when I'm ready to check out, I don't have to check out, I just walk out. Have you guys heard of the Amazon Go story? Yeah? Awesome. Now, what Amazon Go is it's a single store right now that just came out of beta and open to the public. And how it works is you pull up your Amazon account, you scan your phone as you walk into the store, and the cameras around tie that phone to your face to all the products you're picking up on the shelf. And then when it comes time to leave, you really just walk out. I haven't been there myself, but a couple friends of mine have been there, and they said it feels like stealing. And what do you think happens when consumers can just pick up products and walk out? I'll give you a hint. It's the same thing that happened when we introduced credit cards. Somebody said it. They spend more. People spend more. They can just pick up products and leave. Well, Amazon's not the only company doing it. There's actually a number of other third-party, more startup companies, one of which is Standard Cognition, where, yeah, they've developed it as a software solution for retail stores. Now, it does work for smaller formats better today, right? A more manageable number of items, but it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out, well, yeah, that's probably going to go into the bigger stores too, and, well, maybe Whole Foods, at least in the US, is going to be next for that. Now, people are really expensive here. I think that's all I've heard the last couple of days is everybody talking about labor costs, right? Now, if you go a step beyond self-checkout, where there's literally no checkout, 30 to 55% increase in profit margins. And maybe more here because the people are so expensive, right? And again, I'm not saying get rid of people. Like, I love people. It's how technology comes together with people to make a difference. And those people that get freed up can work on more strategic things, can work one-on-one with customers instead of just scanning products, right? Now, I walk out of the store, and I get emailed a receipt. And it's not just any receipt. It's a receipt that's tied to a blockchain. So I can see where that product was developed, where all the raw materials were sourced, and I've got transparency into the entire supply chain. Now, it takes something to get to a world where blockchain works for the entirety of the supply chain, right? First thing is everybody's got to get on the same platform, but imagine the implications, because I know there's a ton of blockchain companies out there, of everybody being on the same standard and literally having transparency throughout the entirety of the supply chain for us as the business people and also the customers. At least maybe. I know that's a scary idea, right? Now, is our friend going to dance now? So I told you a story in the beginning, right? What retail used to be like. Well, the future of retail is actually a return to that kind of retailing, but it happening at scale with the use of technology. Now, that innovation gap we were talking about, it is there, like really right there for every one of us to step into. And customers are ready and willing to engage as long as we maintain those three principles of being perceptive, being predictive, and being present with what our customers are looking for and the new things we can create. Now, we are really, like no kidding, on the precipice of something new. Something entirely different from what retail is today. Equal in scope and change to the advent of modern retailing. That same scale is happening again. And I really cannot wait to be part of this future with all of you guys. Thank you. Paul.